Hey everyone, welcome into the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. I'm Ben Mandel, joined by John Pauline. No Corey Jason this week as he's got some stuff going on. Hopefully he will be back with us next week. But guys, we have just 2 weeks left in this baseball season. 4 series remain for each team after today, Sunday. And John, we are coming down into the stretch, and playoff baseball's right around the corner, and it looks like your Phillies are going to be the only one of our teams getting in.
I'm excited about that. I mean, I had him, I think, early in the beginning of the season, I had him pegged to maybe win the division, but I'm happy with the wild card spot again. I mean, look what they did with the last season. I mean, all the way to the World
Mhm.
Series, but just think they were a little too tired by the end there and just couldn't get it done. So hopefully
Yeah,
this year's
and
different.
look, it was a lot last year, and it was a big push, but last year it felt like it was the beginning of things, especially with the way these contracts are for Philadelphia. Last year was the first year, so definitely a lot of promising stuff from them. Now, some not promising stuff. We may have seen Shohei Ohtani play his last game in an Angels uniform. We have no idea what the free agency status is going to be. I actually saw someone making a joke saying, "Oh, how funny would it be if we hype up Ohtani's free agency just for him to fly back to Japan?"
That'd be something. I mean,
That it would be something. I don't see him
I don't
walking
think so.
away from however many hundreds of millions of dollars he's going to get just to go get Tommy John surgery. So I don't see him walking away from that. Now, with Ohtani, though, he is done for the year. He had the oblique issue. They placed him on the injured list yesterday. He is done for the year. He was already done as a pitcher. Now he's done as a hitter, but just this really feels like the final blow. The Angels, even though they were out of contention, Ohtani made them still must watch TV. Now, all of a sudden, it truly does just feel like a black hole, doesn't it?
It does. And I mean, they even, it just like there's no point in almost watching the Angels anymore. And they even said, I was reading that he cleared his locker out and everything, and the Angels aren't even commenting. So I think I don't know if you'd even see him back. This is probably the last time Angels uniform, and I think he's done for the season. I mean,
Yeah, and when it comes to his free agency, it is important to note that Ohtani said winning is the most important thing. It's not the money and it's not location. So he did come out and say he would not be wary of the East Coast like he was last time. This time he said winning is most important. The East Coast is not going to scare him away this time. So just another thing to think about when it comes to Ohtani. But with him done and out for the year now, we'll move on, and we go over to two teams in the National League that clinched the division. The Dodgers clinched on Saturday. The Braves clinched earlier in the week against the Phillies. And, these two teams, they feel like the two best in the National League, really the two real contenders with a bunch of other pretenders floating around them. But, these two teams got in, John. They took divisional round exits last year, despite being the top two division winners and the bye week receivers for this playoff format. Do you foresee the same thing happening, or do you think that the Dodgers and Braves learned a little bit from last year?
well, I guess if you're a Dodgers or a Braves fan, you would hope they learned from last year and whatever, they were doing then, maybe they mix it up this year. But I mean, sometimes I think that buy in that that one with that buy there you get, it kind of throws you out of your rhythm. You cool off because like with all sports, it's all about momentum and getting hot and stuff. And it's like if you're getting hot at the end of the season here, which you really want, because you can carry that all the way to the playoffs. But if you get that buy, like sometimes that can cool you right off and stuff, and then you're starting from square one. And while these other teams are just playing, so
Well, I
I
mean,
mean, it's
you look at the the four teams that got bye weeks last year. The two in the National League lost. The Yankees were pushed to 5 games from Cleveland, and they were actually down 2 games to 1 in that series. They were able to come back before getting swept by the Astros. It was one of those things that it looked like last year a lot of teams pushed so hard to get the bye that they burned themselves out to get it. Now, that may be the case again this year, but it doesn't look like they're putting as much emphasis on getting the bye week this year as getting home field and just winning games and resting up. Now, next thing though we have on the docket, Matt Olson from the Braves. He went and set the Braves home run record with 52 home runs. I was talking about it a couple weeks ago, John, how I thought maybe the polar bear could catch him. He's 7 back. The polar bear is 45. He may still get to 50, but Matt Olson has just been on a tear, and he looks like he wants that home run title.
He's been just hitting really good this past week. I mean, it's amazing because he was hitting home runs. It felt like almost every day, sometimes two a game. And then
Mm-hmm.
he for about a week or so he just didn't do much of anything. And this past week he's been
Yeah, he got right back on
doing
the
very
horse.
well, right back on course. And I mean, you might see a lot more from him, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to see. But last thing I do want to touch on in the news, it's interesting, right? The San Diego Padres, they're out, but Matt Waldron, knuckleballer. It's something we don't really see too much anymore. We don't see a knuckleballer. Well, this one for the Padres did something that a knuckleballer hasn't done in 5 years, and that's pick up a win. He earned the win. The knuckleballers are coming back. The days of R.A. Dickey and Tim Wakefield. Hopefully, it's not done, and Waldron can establish himself as a fun knuckleballer to watch because it's just so much fun seeing these guys swing and come up empty at that fluttering pitch. But
I,
I do want to get into studs and duds now, and I know we're going to backtrack a little bit here because, John, your stud is Matt Olson.
it is my stud is Matt Olson. As we were saying, he got on track this week with 10 hits, 4 home runs, 11 RBIs, 6 walks, 400, average. Like leading MLB with 52 home runs. Like, who would have thought? Everyone thought it was going to be Ohtani, but unfortunately he got hurt, and now Matt Olson is just it just keeps going and going, and it's like you don't know how many home runs he's going to finish with. I mean, there's still plenty of games left, so I mean, who knows where he's going to finish? I don't. Can he hit 60?
It's
And
definitely one of those things that is a stretch. He would have to pretty much get close to one a day, but it is also worth noting that everyone knows Coors Field is the highest elevation field in the league. Do you know what number 2 is?
at number two, let's see, thinking. Ooh,
It is Truist
is
Park
it
in Atlanta.
true? Is it?
It is. So the elevation is the second highest in baseball. There's a reason why the ball flies out of there the way it does. It's just not talked about as much anymore. That first year that ballpark opened, the balls were flying, and it was brought up a bunch about how it is the second highest elevation point in baseball.
Well, we'll have to wait and
Now,
see.
yeah. Well, let's hear your dud though, John.
My dud is my stud last week, who I praised up and down, is my dud this week. Zach Gallen. I feel like it always happens. You have a pitcher, they have pitch a really good game, like they'll pay, perfect game, complete game shutout, no hitter, whatever, and then almost guaranteed next game outing they get blown up, they get rocked because he only made it 5 innings, gave up 8 hits, 6 earned runs, 2 walks, only 4 strikeouts, and took the L. Like it's just you go from greatness to just terribleness. But and then
Yeah,
but
let's go
honorable
Mets,
mention,
right?
yeah, but honorable mention for Dud too is John Gray for the Texas Rangers. He's almost like my dud of the month almost because he's just been horrendous. I feel he's just been horrendous. Like since I think early in the season, since he got a blister on his hand, was shut down for about a week. Ever since then, he's just been horrendous. He was lights out start of the season, and then just been horrendous ever since that blister. It's
Yeah, the
insane.
Rangers, I mean, the Rangers as a whole just feel like they've been falling apart, even though they have gotten themselves back into a playoff spot. Now, my stud, it's going to be Brandon Woodruff, who turned around against Miami, was able to throw 9 innings, picked up the win, a complete game shutout, 6 hits, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. What a performance for Brandon Woodruff. Now, my dud, on the other hand, it's going to be Tyler Glass now. He got absolutely hammered by the Orioles on Saturday. And, you know, he hasn't had a lot of these. This Tampa Bay team needed Tyler Glass now to go out there, throw, and get them a win if they wanted to get this division back. You see how tight the race is between Baltimore and Tampa Bay. Baltimore went and hammered and roughed up Glasnow, just 4 innings, took the loss, 8 hits, 6 runs, 2 walks, only 4 strikeouts. Very uncharacteristic outing for Killian Murphy, Tyler Glasnow, Oppenheimer himself. Now, we are going to get into the meat of the show, and this is the race in the American League West, because I know we have 3 teams, both of us do, 3 teams from the American League West in our top 10 rankings. The Rangers occupying the second wild card. The Mariners currently sitting on the outside looking into the wild card picture, and then the Astros leading the division. Before we jumped on here, we talked and we said we wanted to look at the schedules remaining for each team. Now, the Mariners, they're finishing up with the Dodgers this weekend, and then they have a cupcake in the Athletics. But they follow that up with 3 against the Rangers, 3 against the Astros, 4 against the Rangers. So that's 7 games against the Rangers between the 2 teams fighting for the wild card spot. The Astros, on the other hand, they get Baltimore to start this next week, then Kansas City, Seattle, and then Arizona. So not the easiest, but more wins available for the Astros. So it's safe to say they're likely going to lock up the division. The Rangers, their other series, it is the Red Sox, the Angels, and then the Mariners. So what are you thinking right now? The Mariners, they definitely have to be looking at this, seeing an opportunity against the Rangers, but realizing if they lose these games against the Rangers, they get the Astros in the middle of that. They are going to be in trouble if they do not win a majority of these games.
These are must-win series for the Mariners, and same thing goes for the Rangers. These are must-win series for the Rangers. I think it's safe to say in your assumption that the Astros are probably going to take the division, because I think they have some easy there with the Athletics. So, but I mean, you look at it, the Mariners don't win those series, they're probably out of the wild card, and the Blue Jays probably take that wild card spot. But I mean, same thing, and if the the Rangers win all those series, it's probably gonna take the wild card of the Mariners. It's gonna be tough, but I mean, it's tough because you're playing these teams almost back to back to back, so it's like you might see like a split, and it might come down to maybe like a tiebreaker or something towards the end.
Well, we could very well see a 3-way tie, because the Rangers are only a half game back of the Astros for the division lead heading into Sunday. Now, and then the Mariners are a game back of the Rangers.
And the Blue Jays are right there too.
Exactly. Well, and I'm throwing the Blue Jays out of this for right now because I'm thinking with all of these head-to-head games, one of these teams isn't going to make it. And the fact that the Astros only have the 3 games against the Mariners is a little bit more, it's more feasible because they have more wins outside of that. You figure the Rangers and Mariners, let's say they go 4-3. They split 4-3 like that. One of the one who wins that series is who gets pushed ahead because of how close these teams are. So
because of tiebreakers, inner division play for the tiebreaker.
Yeah, exactly. And, Houston, they've just been cruising. I feel like, the Rangers seem to have picked things up again. I'm still not a believer, especially with the Max Scherzer injury. He's likely done until the playoffs. They said he's probably not going to pitch in the playoffs if they make it. Talk about brutal when you give up a prospect that they did in Luis Angel Acuna for 2 months of regular season, Max Scherzer.
And he didn't even pitch fantastic either for those 2 months.
Nope. I mean, he was solid. He had some moments where he was back, but it definitely wasn't the Max Scherzer they were expecting when they gave up that prospect for him.
Just the Mariners seem to have cooled off too here. Like it seems like it almost seems like
they
the
may have
Rangers
peaked a
have
little
more
too
momentum.
early. I think they may have just peaked a little too early, but I still think that the Mariners are a better team than the Rangers. I think that the Mariners have better pitching. And I'll be honest, I think home field means a lot more to the Mariners than it does for the Rangers. I think that the Mariners' home field, when they're at home, they're more likely to win than the Rangers are when they're at home. Now, am looking here. It looks like the Mariners will be starting this. The first 3-game series will be in Texas in Arlington. Then the Mariners will come home to finish the year with 3 against Houston and then the 4 against Texas. So that last 4-game series to close out the year, it will be in Seattle.
So you might see a Mariners wild card, playoff berth there, and the Rangers might be sitting at
How
home on their couch.
exciting. Let's say they're tied in that series. How exciting is that series?
I mean, I'm gonna say that's some much watched baseball right there.
Oh, for sure. Sunday Night
I
Baseball better be
mean,
flexing that in if they don't already have it.
I mean,
But
not only a baseball fan. I mean, if you're not only a Rangers or Mariners fan, baseball fan, that's
oh
that's
yeah.
probably peak baseball right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you want.
Definitely. Definitely. Last thing though, we do want to talk about here on the pod before we get into our weekly series highlight. It's the Milwaukee Brewers, because we talked about the NL Central, but we've talked a lot about the Reds and the Cubs, the 2 young, exciting teams. But the Brewers, they've established themselves since the trade deadline, and they've put themselves on top of this division, and they've held it. They've held off the Cubs, who are all of a sudden started to struggle. They've held off the Reds, who have tapered off a bit after a hot month or so after Ellie De La Cruz came up. But when we look at the Brewers, they had a very interesting trade deadline where they said, look, this is our window. Last year, they sold guys, even though they looked like they were in a playoff spot. This year, they went out, they bought a few guys. They brought in Carlos Santana from the Pirates. They brought in outfielder Mark Canha from the Mets, who hit a grand slam yesterday, by the way. And then they brought in left-handed pitcher Andrew Chafin from the Diamondbacks, a guy a lot of Mets fans, I remember, in the offseason were yelling at the Mets to sign, and they ended up with no lefty in their bullpen. Good job. So we look at this Brewers club, though. They've gotten things turned around. The other big addition wasn't necessarily a guy they brought in from outside the organization, but Brandon Woodruff returned. And that's another huge piece for the Brewers to have back in their rotation. But John, I just want to talk. What of these moves was the biggest? What do you think was the biggest contributor for the Brewers' success? And how have they been able to sustain it?
I mean, as I was saying earlier, baseball in any sport is just, momentum and getting hot at the right time. And the Brewers got hot at the right time. Now saying what caused them to get hot, you can go through a plethora of things. But I think Brandon Woodruff is probably the biggest thing coming back because, him being healthy helps them out so much. And
Well, this rotation's so deep with him now. When you have Peralta, you have Burns, you have Woodruff, that's as dangerous a top 3 as any.
that's some extra wins you maybe pick up now that you wouldn't have picked up earlier. That's some extra wins you pick up because you have a deeper rotation. And since pitching just seems scarcer and scarcer in this league, there seems like a scarcity of quality pitching almost. And it's especially this year. But it's things I think more than anything, I think that's probably more of a reason why they got hot, why they're doing good. I mean, you look at some of their trades, Mark Canha, probably, that helps out a lot. But I think Woodruff coming back is probably one of the biggest things there. And it's probably really good going into the playoffs now because you have that deeper rotation and you want that for the playoffs because you don't want your guys to get tired. You want them fresh. And if you have, deeper rotation, you can kind of spread starts out more and get more out of your pitchers.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the pitching is definitely the biggest thing. I do want to talk about the offense, though, and some of the bats. Bringing in Carlos Santana and Mark Canha, yeah, they've been solid pieces, but they've also had some young pieces come up and do well, and some veterans step back up. Yelich, he is what he is at this point in his career, but Sal Frelick has been great, very exciting, a lot of fantastic catches out there in the outfield. He hits for power, he can hit for average, and he's got great plate discipline and a good idea of the strike zone. So definitely a big fan of the young kid Sal Frelick, the rookie who came up this summer. Now, Canha, yeah, he's got a grand slam. I liked him when the Mets brought him in. I thought the home runs just in a Mets uniform weren't there. I thought maybe he needed some more consistent playing time and maybe to get out of New York and to get out of the noise because he's a solid baseball player. Carlos Santana, he's another veteran power bat at this point. But these were nice moves that Milwaukee was able to make them more competitive in a division that, yeah, you've had some young teams that are a little early on their timeline in the Cubs and Reds. But, from Milwaukee's standpoint, they know, hey, we're a veteran team. We can get in. And with our pitching, if they can get hot, there is not a team in the National League that has 3 starters that can match up with the top 3 in Milwaukee. It's just not going to happen. So definitely something that the National League is going to be on high alert for. If the Brewers can hit and provide offense for their pitching, they're going to be okay.
They might go further in the playoffs than I think maybe a lot of people expect them to go. I mean, it almost feels like the Brewers kind of went under the radar the whole season. Like they've been playing, never really played really bad, never really played really good, but they kind of just
they were
there. They were always
baseball,
there,
and then boom,
they were always
they
there.
were able to just creep and blow up a little bit come the trade deadline. Few weeks before, basically right after the All-Star break, the Brewers came out hot. They said, look, we're not going to let this Reds team take the division from us. And they stormed and they have established themselves. They haven't been able to pull away too much, but now with the Cubs kind of falling off a little bit and going on their little bit of a rut, the Brewers seem okay.
They do. I mean, maybe years to come, they're going to have to worry more about the Reds and the Cubs because I think some of these teams maybe were a year or two away of like doing what they're doing
the
now.
Brewers window is certainly shutting compared to their windows that are opening. But that's exactly why the Brewers had to go for it and take it this year, because if you don't get it this year, you're not going to with those other teams on the rise. It's like when the Mets in 2015, 16 were trying to go all in. It's because they saw what the Braves were doing. They saw what these other teams were doing. They were trying to compete and win while their window was still there when they could have the path into the playoffs through their division. So we are going to start to wrap this up, though. John, let's hear your weekly series highlight. Which series are you looking forward to most this week?
I'm looking forward as a baseball fan, like a Phillies fan right here. I got the Philadelphia at Atlanta, looking to bounce back from that rough series they had last week. I think they only picked up 1 win in the 4-game series, I think it was. So I'm looking, hopefully they can take this series. I mean, the Phillies can definitely beat the Braves. They can definitely do it. I think they were hitting. I think the biggest problem the Phillies is their pitching, but they're hitting, and if their pitching, can hold and stuff, and they keep hitting, I think they can, might be able to take this series there. So it should be a really good game to watch.
Yeah,
Really
I'm
good
interested
series.
to see. I'm interested to see how the starters line up in that. I actually have been thinking Ranger Suarez has looked pretty good lately. I'm excited to see him get back out there. But for me, my series highlight, I highlighted it when they played last time as well in Baltimore. Houston and Baltimore. Now Baltimore heads to Houston. It should be a fun series, should be electric. Houston has to win some games, and Baltimore is still trying to hold off Tampa. So these are 2 of the best teams in the American League going at it head to head. Should be a blast. But that is going to do it for us here on the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Make sure you check us out on our website at outsidersports.net. Got lots of football stuff, hockey stuff starting up soon. We've got the football podcast as well as the hockey podcast over on YouTube and Spotify. Follow us on X at Outsider Sports 3. Make sure you have a good week and keep tuning in because we have the stretch run and playoff baseball coming up.